challenger. Des de Vere, as she was 4 years ago, was second in the trials in Houston, but had to drop out of the London Olympic Games, and she's never won a marathon. So Des has had an uninterrupted, brilliant build-up and is really hungry for her first win in a marathon.
All right, about ready to go with a record number of qualifiers for these marathon trials. Nearly 400 qualifying to compete today for those spots on the Olympic team. And the Los Angeles Mayor, Eric Garcetti, is the honorary starter for today's men's race, as 160 men toe the line to start this marathon trial.
On your mark.
And so Mayor Garcetti sends them on their way. 160 fighting for 3 berths to make up the U.S. men's marathon team for Rio.
Tom, it'll be absolutely fascinating to see the pattern of this race, the way it's laid down. Such a warm day is a bit of a surprise to most people out there running today, and to many of us pundits as well. And I just would be very surprised if the first half is anything but very, very conservative. And then it might be a case of who loses their patience when you get through halfway.
Well, very well bunched, as you can see, 160 runners in this first portion of the course.
And look who's right up at the front of the pace. It's Meb Keflezighi. They're in the center of the screen, and this is no move, this is no tactic on his part, but why not be in the front? Why not relax up in the front, not be in the crowd? One of the things we talked about was that this course has many twists and turns, and you'll have a much better sight line of those twists and turns being towards the front as opposed to being tucked in the back.
And also staying out of traffic as they looked at that picture of well-bunched runners here early in the race. Let's take a look at that marathon course that they'll be running today. There's the start line right by the Staples Center, downtown Los Angeles. And as they make that first 2.2-mile loop passing the Staples Center and the Convention Center in the LA Live area.
It's the only place where they'll run uphill, Tim, as they head to the turnaround of this 2.2 loop, but I would hardly call it a hill.
No, it's very, very flat indeed, this course. It's a course of the loop of 2 halves, really. Those long straight sections, long Figueroa, a couple of miles in each direction, and then that loop around USC with all those twists and turns, 8 or 9 corners there, but they're sweeping corners. I don't think they'll really break up the rhythm as much as people are saying, Tom.
And they'll return to the downtown area where they started and head to the finish line. And we're underway here in the men's marathon Olympic trials. 52 of these men are competing in marathons for the first time.
Well, debut marathons are an interesting territory for anybody to step into, but to step into it in this arena at an Olympic trial, trying to qualify for the Olympic Games. We talked about Galen Rupp running his first ever marathon in the Olympic trials. Now, this has been done before successfully by George Young, the great American steeplechaser, 1960, 1964 Olympian in the steeplechase, made it in the steeplechase in 1968, but also qualified in the marathon. He's the only one to ever debut at an Olympic trials marathon and make it onto the Olympic team.
You know what's also significant, Tom, is so much rests on this race with Olympic places up for grabs. First 3 home, that's it, full stop. And Rupp is probably making the right decision here, because championship racing is so different to the big city commercial races where you have pacemakers. There, you have to really put it on the line and run flat out, and your marathon credentials are tested to the extreme physiologically. This today, with a racer like Rupp, who is a supreme championship runner, good tactician, is probably a really good way to dip his toe into the world of marathon racing.
And the leaders already starting to separate themselves from the rest of the pack here early on in the race. And out on the course for the men's race today, to report from there is Lewis Johnson. Lewis?
Hey, Tom. Well, great energy as we came away from that start line. The people of Los Angeles coming out to really welcome these Olympic marathon trials runners to make those first steps toward Rio. And I'll be watching as this race continues to see how athletes sort of pace themselves early. This is going to be a tricky event because of the heat. Right now the temperature checks out at about 66 degrees, but as you mentioned earlier, it's going to jump up into the mid-80s, and it's later in the race where things are going to get very dicey in terms of trying to manage fuel. Now, there are 8 elite water stations on this course. Every 5K, an athlete will be able to pick up their bottle, and it's most important that these elite athletes you're looking at get their bottle. Case in point, Meb Keflezighi right there in the middle at the London Olympic Games got the wrong bottle in the first test, table. Ended up getting cramps, which helped cause him to drop back to 20th. He worked his way back up to 4th, so elite water is going to be important. And right now, these guys are pacing themselves, Tom, because the thick of this race will happen later on when things heat up. But right now, great atmosphere in the early steps here in downtown Los Angeles.
All right, Lewis, we'll be checking with you throughout the day as the men's marathon Olympic trial is underway. And one of the favorites, Meb Keflezighi, among the leaders here early on. Back to LA in a moment. Find out more at NBCSports.com/live extra. And Tim Hutchings and Craig Masbach rejoining me, Tom Hammond, here as we look at the men as they continue here about 2 miles, a little more than 2 miles in. But Arciniega taking the lead now in this lead pack.
Yeah, he's amongst the favorites, Nick Arciniega. Tom, he's a 2:11 best marathon runner, but that was 5 years ago now. His last 4 marathons have got slower and slower. He needs a good run today. I guess one advantage in this very warm weather, which is blanketing LA today, is one advantage of going out in front like that is you've got fresh air passing over you. If you're back in the pack, you're sheltered from that fresh air passing over your skin. Now, it might sound like a very, very insignificant factor, but cumulatively, over half an hour, 2 hours, it really does make a difference.
And you can see in the background there that overpass we talked about on this stretch on Figueroa. That is the one break from the sun that the athletes will experience. And as you said, it's maybe a 10, 15 second break, but it's a lot cooler underneath there.
So Nick Arciniega continues to lead. He's the big Star Wars fan. Crossed the finish line with a wand in one of his races. And
I think we refer to that as a lightsaber.
A lightsaber, yeah. I know.
He got it off his wife a couple hundred yards from the finish line. He spent the whole 200 yards trying to get it to light up, Tom. he couldn't get it working.
And now Meb Keflezighi comes alongside to join Nick Arciniega.
I like Arciniega. He trains once a week with his dog, Luna. It's a muscular pit bull, part pit bull, so it's not a good dog for the long distance running, but says sometimes he's out on the trails, the dog will go start chasing squirrels. It doesn't make it a good running companion.
Very steady early pace, Tom. 5:04 for the first mile, 5:09 for the second mile. They went through 2 miles in 10:13. They're on about 2 hours 13 pace, which is what to be expected. Very conservative first few miles.
So Meb in the white hat, checking his watch, going right to the front, trying to make his 4th U.S. Olympic team at age 40. So the men continue through LA, and you see how they've strung out now. 160 started and already have separated themselves with the favorite, Meb Keflezighi, right in front. And so now the women getting ready to start. This will be an even bigger pack than the men. 205 women getting ready to start. There's Dina Castor. She will send them on their way, the bronze medalist in 2004. The honorary starter for the women's side of the Olympic marathon trials.
On your mark.
And they're on their way, 205 of them, battling it out for those 3 Olympic marathon berths. And the top 4 finishers from Houston 4 years ago, all in this field.
Dina, of course, was due to be running in this, Tom. 2:27 in Chicago last October. Showed she's still in very, very good form, but she pulled out literally just 2 or 3 days ago, citing a recent injury as the reason. But has been walking around the hotel with the athletes with a big smile on her face. You know, she's well past her 40th year. She's an Olympic medalist. She's been there and done it. And I think she's just enjoying being another great spectator today.
And when we spoke with her yesterday, you know, she was at peace with it. She said that she wasn't going to go out there unless she was ready to qualify for the team. took on the starter's role.
Will the women have a different strategy than the men, especially here early in the race in the heat? Or will they try to conserve their energy, as we said the men would probably do early on?
Well, I think, Tom, that as Tim outlined, the men's race much more open than the women's race. The top women are literally minutes ahead of the women that trail them, both in terms of time and also experience. So I think you'll see the control of the race fall to the women with the better times, Shalane Flanagan, Des Linden, the people that have done it before and who are really head and shoulders above the others. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll push the pace, though. They, too, will want to be conservative because it's that last 6 miles in the blistering heat that we'll expect them to be running in past noon that will really be a test for everyone.
And there is Shalane Flanagan in the center of your picture with the white visor on, the defending champion that goes right to the front.
And right beside her there to the right of picture is Amy Cragg, her training partner. This is like a training run for the pair of them there, Tom. Those white peaked caps, they do everything together. They said they would love to both make the team together. They both said they couldn't imagine preparing for Rio if one of them had made the team without the other one preparing for Rio alongside him. So huge companionship there, and you can take reinforcement from that, Craig.
Well, I think it's a very, very positive thing, exactly as you say. They are literally running as they do day in, day out, particularly when they're in the front of the field and they don't even see anybody else. But I think that's a double-edged sword because when you talk to each of them, they each had tremendous emotion when they talked about this idea of them both making the team. What happens if midway through the race or late in the race, one of them starts to fade? How will the other one react to that?
Flanagan and Craig just there together with the white visors on, leading this race in the early stages.
You know, Tom, if you regard 2 hours 30 minutes as the sort of benchmark of international class running for elite ladies, 9 women in this race have reached that standard. So it's a smaller elite pack, if you like. And you know, the dynamics are going to be less varied, I suspect, in this. There aren't many debutantes in this who are really a threat. One big question mark and a fascinating athlete who made the team 4 years ago for London is Cara Gaucho. They're about 4th from right, who had a dreadful experience in New York back in 2014, nearly retired. Her 2 coaches persuaded her to stick with it. And we understand she's in very good shape, but a big question mark over Cara at the age of 34.
I have tremendous respect for the way Cara has kind of rejuvenated her career because that was really a low point, literally in tears after that New York City Marathon failure, I guess you could call it, failure by her standards. I think she ran 2:37. But she's really put her career back together, some very encouraging runs, and as you say, her coaches, Mark Wetmore and Heather Burrows, are very, very bullish on her ability to perform today.
Well, as the women continue on their run, let's go out on the course and join Carrie Tollefson. Welcome, Carrie.
Thanks, guys. What an amazing day. It's pretty hot, but to see all these athletes underway, it's pretty exciting. Right now, our 2 big names are leading this big pack. Shalane Flanagan and Amy Cragg right up front, feeling very relaxed. It's early, as we've said, but there's a lot of names right now that I'm looking.
And a couple of Los Angeles skyscrapers sort of blocking Carrie's commentary there as she tried to report from out on the course, but we got the gist of it. And as they continue with the training partners, Flanagan and Cragg, in the same sort of uniforms, running together as if it were a training event for them, at least so far. Meanwhile, the men have entered the USC campus.
Tom, Craig and I ran this section yesterday, jogged and ran this section around the USC campus. A couple of miles with 8 or 9 corners, but they are long sweeping corners. You can take them at speed. I don't think there'll really be an issue, apart from maybe on this first lap where you've got a big pack, but it's dead flat, good surface underfoot. Beautiful, beautiful campus they're running through. Going past the Coliseum might inspire a few of them, but I don't think it'll be as rhythm sapping or adjusting as people have been making out. People have been talking about these extremes of that section, Craig, but we found it not pretty user-friendly.
Well, at our pace, it was a little bit easier, I must say, but it really was a joy to run through that campus. I really enjoyed the shade that was there.
Running through some shade right now.
Yeah, there'll be some students who will come out probably as the race progresses a little later in the morning. But those turns were not as severe as we'd been led to believe, and I think the pace is showing it. They're running around a 5-minute mile pace now, so they've picked it up just a little bit.
2013 at mile 4, the men, as they run through the SC campus. And with the mention of USC, our best wishes to our friend and former football partner, Pat Hayden, the athletic director at USC, who was taken ill a few days ago. We wish him all the best as he recovers. Marathon trials continue from Los Angeles.
1984, I decided to watch the race on TV. I was in my hotel. I was so inspired by what Joni did. She took the lead at the 3-mile mark against the greatest field of women marathoners ever assembled, including Greta Weitz, who had won the World Championships the year before. And she went out in front and pushed in weather similar to today, very hot weather. People said impossible, couldn't be done. And she literally never looked back, didn't look over her shoulder, didn't want to encourage the women behind her. And she ran into history with that incredible victory. I left my hotel, put my running stuff on, left my hotel, ran to the stadium. I wanted to be there when she made that history, and people were literally crying in the stadium.
Tim, you remember?
Well, Tom, you know, Joni herself has gone on record as saying you have to be really selfish to be an elite athlete and an Olympic champion in particular. And I was focused on my own races back in '84, so I could have cared less about Joni. But actually, looking back at it, of course, it was a watershed moment in women's sport, because the first Olympic marathon, it showed the world that women could hack it. They could run really hard for 2.5 hours. They were tough. They could do everything men could do. Since then, you know, a bunch of other sports have come on stream, like the women's pole vault, for example. Everybody thought ladies can't do the pole vault. Of course they can.
Well, you know, Joan's winning time would have won the men's Olympic marathon in most of the Olympics that had preceded 1984. So I think it let people know women were here to stay in the marathon.
The first ever women's Olympic marathon here in the 1984 games at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, where the men are approaching, going right by there now. On cue, right by the Coliseum. My father-in-law was a track high school athlete, went on to be a Southeastern Conference champion at the University of Kentucky, but he and his track coach and one other runner drove cross-country in 1932 to attend the Olympic Games there at the Coliseum.
I bet that wasn't on an interstate.
No, it took a while.
Seeing that beautiful entrance to the stadium reminds me of the great opening ceremonies in 1984, where Rayford Johnson, who's the honorary chairman of this event, was lighting the flame to open those games.
Really nice section, this. They run around this square here. It's almost like a track. It's about 400 meters around, just right in front of the Coliseum, which is still such an evocative, beautiful, beautiful arena, despite the fact the track was ripped up some years ago. This is a time for calm heads, Tom. You know, early in the race, they're all feeling strong. They're all feeling really fresh and bouncy. And you've just got to hold back. You know, learn. You could do a lot worse. We were talking about this yesterday. You could do a lot worse today than just sit in there and shadow Meb. You know, he gets it right again and again. There's nobody more experienced. Why? You could almost not go wrong if you shadowed Meb for the first 2/3 of the race.
He's run 22 marathons. Only once did he drop out of a marathon. So you're absolutely right. Incredible consistency, incredible running intelligence. One of the things I did to prepare for this, I read his book, Meb for Mortals. I regret not having it when I was a runner, because there were a lot of great tips. But he talked about the 2014 Boston, where he'd run his worst marathon 5 months earlier. He wins and runs a personal best at the Boston Marathon in 2014. 10 years after winning the Olympic silver medal. So this is a guy who knows it all, knows how to get it done. And he does it by doing the little things, he says, as I've mentioned in the on-camera. Stretching, icing, not overdoing it when he's getting ready for the big races, and getting those little injuries that can hold you back.
That, of course, is the sign of a veteran. As you said, over 20 marathons. That's hard to imagine. And here he is at 40 years old. If he makes the team, Meb would be the oldest U.S. marathon runner ever.
Well, they're just about to leave the USC campus, Tom. The third and fourth miles were 5 minutes each exactly. Done a 5:08. They went through 5 miles in 25:21. So they're on more or less 2:13 tempo.
So that's how the men are going. Let's check in with the women's race.
Well, hey guys, it's starting to heat up out here. They were in the cool section of the course, and now the sun is beating down. Shalane Flanagan, Amy Craig out front. But one woman that we've all had our eyes on is Des Linden, and she's about in 20th position right now. And beforehand, I talked to her, and she said, I'm going to chill out as much as I can for 13.1 miles, and then the race is going to start. And she said a lot of people are going to wonder where she is, because she likes to push. But today it's all about conserving energy, keeping her body temperature down, and making this team and hopefully winning this race. Another woman up front here, Kellen Taylor. She's had a phenomenal year. She ran her first marathon last year in 2:28, so one of the fastest women in the field, and she's very confident. She said her daughter got into town last night, and it's time to race, and she wants to make this team. So I'm not surprised to see her up front here, but I am surprised to see how many women are still in this pack.
All right, Carrie, thank you.
Guys.
Thank you very much. As we see Flanagan, Craig, and Taylor there, and let's check out the men's race again with Lewis Johnson.
Well, Tom, we are back out on Figueroa after snaking through USC. I got to tell you, those turns back there are so tight, lots of switchbacks, but again, it's nice and cool, and it gives these guys a break from the long stretch we'll have right now on Figueroa. Before we went into USC, all the athletes picked up their first elite water bottles. Everybody seemed to be successful there. Mentioned the importance of hydrating early, because the late in the race is when things are going to get tough. Meb Keflezighi still hanging in there, saying that he understands that he really just has to stay in the mix. And it was so funny because as he was stretching before the race, he kind of looked at me and gave me that wink like, I know what to do. I know how to use my experience in this race. You can see Meb on the left there with the turquoise jersey and the white hat. And on the other side of things, you have Galen Rupp, who is in his first one. Remember, this guy running track races in circles always has his coach, Alberto Salazar, right there being able to speak to him and coach him, but this is a different deal. He's on his own out here trying to figure it out. I think that Alberto's going to pop up here and there. So most importantly, Alberto told me, is that he get his fluids early, and they believe that he'll be okay. And then the other thing that I've noticed is Dathan Ritzenheim. There's the young man who tasted the bitter pill in 2012 of finishing in fourth. He was so devastated after that, but now he's back with another opportunity. And he told me that his two kids, Addie and June, they're 8 and 5. They're in Grand Rapids, Michigan right now in front of the TV watching their dad try and make this Olympic team come true. And so he's out here trying to redo that Olympic deal that didn't work out 4 years ago. Early on, everybody's still looking very reserved, very conservative in these early miles.
All right, Lewis, thank you very much. As Galen Rupp in the white hat continues mid-pack as they're going by those refreshment stands, getting their own bottles. It's quite a dance to get the correct bottle as they go by with so many runners. And you see Galen Rupp accelerating there in the white hat in his first marathon, trying to make the U.S. team for the Rio Games in August. Back in a moment. '36 Olympics in Berlin. Looking forward to seeing that. Had the privilege of interviewing Jesse Owens at one time. And, of course, we did the World Championships in the Berlin Olympic Stadium, and you can just feel the history there when you're on the same site where Jesse Owens performed in front of Adolf Hitler.
I ran in that stadium several times, and it was impossible to warm up without seeing many signposts and memories of the 36 games all around. And I've met many 36 Olympians over the years. Very few of them left now, but it was an amazing games on many, many levels. Obviously, the political level as well as the sports level.
So both races continuing. See the elapsed time in the left corner now. The men's race and the women's race side by side.
We've talked about the pace in the men's race being around 2:12, 2:13, which is what we expected. The early miles in the women's race heading them towards around a 2:33 marathon. And I think, as Tim said earlier, what these modest paces do is leave a lot of people in the race, certainly at this point. Now, we would expect that a lot of people would put themselves in the race and stay there. But the slower the pace is, the more unusual things can happen towards the end. Someone can have a race of their life and surprise some of the veterans.
And Tom, of course, it's like a middle distance race on the track, whether it's indoors or outdoors. If you leave it to a last lap sprint, it's a kind of a lottery. You can get a really surprising result. Now, that's less likely here because I suspect the fireworks would start with, say, 10 kilometers, about 6 miles to go. But traditionally, they say in marathons anyway, the racing starts at about 20 miles. So we don't expect much change in this situation for a little while yet in either race.
The men are on a 2:13 pace with Tyler McCandless leading the way, probably reveling in this hot weather since he has a PhD in meteorology.
Well, he's also the former Kauai Marathon winner, so we know he can run in the heat.
And the heat will be a factor, Tom. They've been running now for what, some 37 minutes, these guys. Those who have not really taken into account the fact that the race is in LA and it was always going to be warm, but nobody expected it to be quite this warm, will be suffering over this next half hour or so. The heat will begin to get to them. Those who have been down to Florida and done the work, or like Dathan Ritzenhein, trained in 7 pounds of extra clothing to make sure his body's really suffering with the heat, they're going to be feeling a little bit more comfortable.
And there is Meb with the white hat over on the edge of the screen, the shorter one with the white hat in the UCLA colors, and he talked about running in the heat in this marathon trial.
It is going to be hot, but at the same time, I know how to run in the hot weather. It's just going to be, is it going to work to my advantage tomorrow or not? That's the question. But some people can run in the heat and others can. And for the people that cannot run in the heat, it's a disadvantage. But for me, been in Southern California and for most of my life, I think it should be all right.
And so Meb not anticipating any problems. He says he's used to it.
Well, we threw a challenge after challenge at Meb, and as you would expect from the great veteran, nothing fazed him. He said it's warm for everybody. He's used to the hot weather. He anticipated it. He said it's great for the spectators, and like some of the other athletes, he trained in extra clothing and ran indoors on a treadmill to get ready for the heat.
That is a record that you see on your screen. Start of the men's race, 66 degrees. The old record was in Pittsburgh in 2000 when it was 61, and 70 degrees now. And so this is going to be the hottest marathon Olympic trial ever. Let's go back to Lewis.
Well, Tom, as we continue up Figueroa, the blacktop here is going to reflect the heat back up on these athletes. And before the race, Alberto Salazar and his group always using every bit of technology they can to help these athletes. You see Galen Rupp with a cooling vest on and then the cooling gloves. Very, very cold fluids moving through there to try and drop the body temperature, as Alberto told me, just a degree and a half. But he says anything to help delay the body heating up is going to help them in this race. And so they continue to do that. Meb also wearing a cooling vest to get himself ready to get out here. But now things are beginning to warm up a little bit. We've moved up to 69 degrees and we started at 66. Everyone hydrating, sponges, waters, doing everything they can to stay cool. Tom?
The first people to use those cooling vests were back in the 2004 Olympic Games. Dina Castor used it to get to her bronze medal in the marathon. And then Meb Keflezighi, her training partner, teammate up in Mammoth Lakes, also used it. And, of course, he got that exciting silver medal. So proven way to deal with the heat. Wear that cooling vest as you're warming up.
And you see that Galen Rupp has moved up. He was mid-pack early. Now running in there about 4th place in his first marathon ever, trying to make the U.S. Olympic team. The men and women continue through the streets of L.A. in the Olympic trials. Thursday night, the California Science Center hosted the Athletes Party under the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Opened in 1998, the California Science Center, a family destination where guests can explore science with hands-on exhibits. By the way, it took 68 hours to move the Space Shuttle Endeavour from the Los Angeles International Airport to its current location. Download the Team USA app for up-to-the-minute news and exclusive behind-the-scenes coverage of your favorite athletes on their road to Rio. Visit the Google Play Store and iTunes to download the Team USA app today. And the races continue. The men on the left, the women on the right.
Tom, the men's race has changed dynamics over the last 10 minutes or so. We've had the two former Kenyans, Elkanah Kibet and Sam Chalanga, go to the front and push the pace along. Now they've eased back now, but the 8th mile was a 4:56, by far the quickest of the race, and they've begun to throw it down pretty early. Galen Rupp has been up there in the top 6 or 8 places for the first time, covering that move in case there was a significant surge. So it has been whittled down significantly in that men's race after 8.
And on the women's side of things, Flanagan and Cragg, the training partners, have been there from the outset. Kellen Taylor's there as well.
They ran their 4th mile in 5 minutes and 37 seconds, so they're now on 2:31 pace. They've picked it up a bit. This was that bit of the course that we experienced. There's for some reason, sand down the middle, and then on the sides, it's fairly crowned, the surface. So you have a tough choice to make. You can run in the middle, and it's flat, but it's a sand surface. If you run over on the side, particularly the right side, is quite crowned.
For those that this shaded section will be really welcome, Tom, and in second half of the race, they will be desperately keen to grab all that shade where they can. But Shalane, I'm a little surprised she's running quite so aggressively. If you regard her as like the Meb of the women's race, you'd maybe think she'd run conservatively and just tuck in through this first half, because she's got all the guns. She's got amazing track speed, way better than anybody else in the race.
Bronze medal in 2008 in the 10,000 meters at the Beijing Olympics. And remember, she has not had a smooth preparation for this Olympic trials. She came off of her track season last year, was in her rest period, her downtime, and she got a stress reaction in her foot, a broken foot for all intents and purposes, while she was doing some drills, and she missed some time. She really did not start training until about 10 weeks ago in the way that she would consider it training. She did some cross-training, some swimming and biking before that. So this has not been a smooth preparation for Shalane Flanagan.
Steve Flanagan with her training partner, Amy Cragg, on her right, split by Kellen Taylor. Those three have been up there basically from the start of the race.
Well, that 5th mile for the ladies, a 5:50. Tom, after mile 4 was a 5:37. So a little bit of fluctuation there. And maybe people getting excited and then thinking, no, you sort of slap yourself and ease back and keep it sensible, because we're still in, the first 20% of the race.
As they go by the Coliseum. Has there been I don't have seen any problems with the twists and turns of this part of the course.
I think, as Tim said earlier, that was a bit overblown. I think a lot of people read about the course. They looked at the very tiny map that was distributed, and they said, this is going to be like London, a course of attrition, where all the twists and turns in London, we had the cobblestones, you had the sharp uphills. The athletes felt beat up after that race, and some people said that's the same thing that's going to happen here. I think once we ran the course, we were quite comfortable with the fact that many of the turns, or if not most of the turns, were very gentle and would not involve any strong change of rhythm for the runners.
Women taking that turn right now with Taylor, Flanagan, and Cragg still leading. Let's go back to the men's race, where Galen Rupp joined the leaders after starting mid-pack. Made a move to join Tim Ritchie in the white hat at the front here. And there's Galen in the white hat as well in the back. And he's running his first marathon as he looks to qualify for the Rio Games. If history's any indication, though, he knows how to perform on the biggest of stages and is looking ahead to more Olympic success.
Farah's in his sights, but Jerry's back to 3rd. Rupp is 4th, and the home straightaway looms.
I knew there was 4 guys right there, and so I was like, you better not be 4th to be the first one out of a medal.
Here's Mo Farah of Great Britain, leading Kenenisa Bekele and Galen Rupp to the finish. Mo Farah and Galen Rupp, 1-2.
I remember it just being surreal crossing the line. I mean, if you look at pictures, I'm looking to my right and to my left, just thinking, there's got to be more people up there, because I couldn't believe that I finished 2nd. It's something that you dream about, you think about all your life, and then, to actually happen, it was just a perfect ending.
In fact, it fueled a whole new beginning for the Portland native. Following in the footsteps of his coach, Alberto Salazar, Rupp has expanded his Olympic focus beyond the track races in which he's been so successful, and today he takes his first ever crack at the marathon's grueling distance.
I've never run a marathon up to this point, but my fitness is great. You know, I feel younger. It sounds weird for me to say that, but I feel like I did 4 or 5 years ago. I've always planned on running a marathon. I just didn't realize that it might be this soon, but the marathon is such a prestigious event, so you know, I'm just excited about it.
Should he conquer the distance and his more experienced competitors today, Rupp has indicated he'd consider a rare 10K marathon double in Rio.
It might seem like a crazy double, but there's 9 or 10 days between the two, so you know, it's definitely not out of the question. The hardest part is really just going to be able to find that balance in my training, because it is such a drastic distance. You know, 10K is only 6 miles and the marathon is 26. So it's definitely going to be a lot of running, but I am confident I'll be able to have success in both.
And how do you assess Galen's first marathon so far?
Well, I think he's probably running a little more enthusiastically by going up towards the front than his coach would like. Alberto calls running a marathon an imponderable enterprise. He says there's always an element of discovery and surprise, usually not positive in the marathon. So hopefully Galen didn't read that, which was in Alberto's book. But, you know, you saw the type of training that he does, and he mentioned being kind of fresher than he was even a few years ago. They've dialed back some of that gym work that he does. They felt in the last couple of years he actually got too strong. He was too much in the gym. So they backed off, and he feels a lot fresher, and they feel that's why he's able to compete at longer distances now.
He's running conservatively enough, I think. I mean, he's way back there in about 15th place, something like that. He's just following this main group, you know, within sight of any breaks that are made, but we're still a long way from halfway. Yeah, and there's drinks being passed around there. It's all going to be friendly at this stage. They ain't going to be doing that with a mile to go, I can tell you.
And the temperature now 70 degrees in the shade. As they can continue their run, and Galen Rupp and Meb Keflezighi, two of the favorites right there together. Keflezighi in his UCLA colors, and Rupp the taller of the two, as they continue the men's and women's race, looking for those Olympic berths for Rio. Trayvon Bromell headlined the field competing in Boston. That's the New Balance Indoor Grand Prix. Tomorrow, 4 Eastern on NBCSN. And back to the women's race here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Kellyn Taylor to the fore there, Tom, just to the right center of picture. And Taylor, very much one of the favorites for a place. She's 29-year-old from Sussex, Wisconsin, and as a 2:28 performer. That was in Houston last year, where she made her debut. 2:28 makes her one of the fastest in the race. In fact, the 6th fastest American debutante of all time. And she had a great year last year. You know, she set PRs at 10,000 meters and half marathon as well. And she says she's done plenty of work at race pace. She really has dialed in for this challenge here today. And kind of nice for athletes like her, because there's been so much focus upon Flanagan and Des Linden and Amy Cragg and Cara Goucher. She's been under the radar a little bit, and I think that's cool. You know, it's nice to go into a race without too much pressure.
Kellyn, one of 25 women making their marathon debuts today. And she is the leader, as Cragg and Flanagan have dropped back just behind Kellyn Taylor.
In the blue, they're right behind Kellyn Taylor, is Belanesh Gebre, former Ethiopian, who's a little bit of an unknown factor, I suppose, in this one. She's been to the front and led for a mile or so and then eased right back. But again, really early stage in that ladies' race. Less than 39 minutes on the clock. They went through 6 miles in 34:42, so they're still on something around 2:31, 2:32 tempo for the ladies. Des Linden to the right of picture there, so confident in her body language and the way she carried herself and spoke yesterday. Tom, very, very impressive. She said her preparation has been spot on, but she's held back a little bit. She was so scared of getting hurt for this. I think she says that every day she thinks of that disappointment and frustration from 2012 having to drop out at the London Games.
Well, she talked about very dark moments after that. You know, her whole life she'd worked towards going to the Olympics. She finally makes it to the Olympics and has to drop out early in the race, and it made her question everything. And one of the things she's most proud of is how she regathered herself and really has put together an outstanding series of years with great performances at big city marathons since that time. And her preparation, I think you mentioned, again, keyed at 95%. Her coaches, the Hanson brothers, Keith and Kevin, said to her, we don't want to go 100%. One, because you might get injured. Two, because if you go 100% at the Olympic trials, what's left for the Olympics? So let's dial it back a little. You're good enough that you can make this team without being 100% of your top fitness. She's bought into that and is very confident, as Tim says.
And Des talked about getting back to the Olympic Games.
It'd be incredibly special to go back to the Olympics. I think it's really what's kept me in the sport the last 4 years. Getting there was phenomenal in 2012, having my heart broken. It's the epitome of the highs and the lows in the sport, so to get another chance would be just the best. I can't even, it's undescribable.
You know, we mentioned her dialing back the training, but that still means they've been running 120, 125 miles per week in hot weather in Orlando. They feel they're very well prepared for this hot weather. And I said, well, what's it like, that 10 to 12 weeks of training? She says, it's very unsexy. She goes, I fall asleep in my soup every night. And she said, I went down there with high hopes of reading a great Teddy Roosevelt biography, but I've never made it past page 3. So
she is actually, though, there she is to write a picture in the black. Des Linden, she's remarkably consistent, Tom. You know, she's run 8 times under 2:30, which is a performance beyond virtually everybody in this field, but 8 other athletes. So she has that confidence of repeating the preparation cycle, if you like. And once you get into that groove, the reinforcement you get from that gives you enormous strength. You sleep better, you train more happily. She's just looked very contented this last couple of days.
Des Linden hoping to make another U.S. Olympic team in the marathon. Kellen Taylor still leads on the women's side as they continue through the streets of Los Angeles. Men on the left, women on the right. Still a long way to go from L.A. Be sure to see that tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern Time. It's a 1-hour documentary narrated by Academy Award winner Morgan Freeman about Jesse Owens' iconic performance in those 36 Olympic Games in Berlin that we were discussing earlier. All the ramifications of that performance by Jesse Owens in front of Adolf Hitler. It was one of the true great moments in all of sports history. So 12:30 tomorrow Eastern Time. More Than Gold, Jesse Owens and the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Well, the marathon trials continue. The men are in mile 12, the women mile 8.
Dathan Ritzenhein on the blue there, Tom. The light blue center of picture, just moving up to the 4. He's still got this pack of, what, about 20 guys. They went through 10 miles in 50:38. So the pace still at around 2:12, 2:12:30 tempo. But it has obviously asked questions of the majority of this field. We've got to remember that the temperature is a huge factor today, and it's going to start kicking in this middle third of the race, I suspect. It will whittle down pretty quickly, I suspect, this pack. Now the question is, who will lose patience and kick on away from this group to try and tidy it up a little bit?
You see Ritzenhein, who had the worst possible outcome at the Marathon Olympic Trials in Houston 4 years ago when he finished 4th, as he remembered.
Being 4th in the 2012 Olympic Trials Marathon was crushing, heartbreaking. It was 8 seconds only. It was like nothing in a marathon. So looking back now, I feel blessed to be able to be back here again and to have made the team in the 10,000, but to actually have a really good shot to make it again here. It's given me a lot of motivation, and coming into this, I mean, all my mental energy has been into this race, and it's really kept me going over the last couple of years, and so I plan to hopefully put it all the way out, everything on the course, and just do whatever I can to try to make that 4th team.
You know, he's another great veteran at age 33. He's seen and done it all. Little bit of a scare for him. He got a stiff neck a couple of days ago, and when we talked to him yesterday, he was still feeling the effects of that. Don't see any evidence of that at the moment. And talk about a reaction to what was a personal failure with that 4th place finish. He had not run track for several years, but he wanted to make the game, so he had to start focusing on running the 10K at the Olympic trials in 2012 on very short notice. He started working towards it over the months leading up to the games, but then he didn't have a qualifying time. So he not only had to finish in the top 3, he had to make sure the race was fast enough to get the qualifying time. But then it was windy and cold that night. You guys might remember
Right,
that.
yes.
Yet he did it, and he's really satisfied. He considers that one of the greatest performances of his career.
Nathan Ritzenhein leading at the moment.
Yeah, Ritz just beginning to accelerate there. They just run the slowest mile. The men, their 12th mile was a 5:12. The ladies, it's still looking very comfortable here, I reckon, Tom. They went through 7 miles in 40:36 after a 5:54, still on 2:32 tempo. Both the first halves of these races are kind of rolling out the way we expected. Steady, conservative stuff, quick enough to whittle down the field and get it down to groups of 15 or 20 people. But by the standards of the top half dozen each race, very, very comfortable indeed.
And I think at this point, anybody who's going to be a factor in the race is up in those leading groups. We did see a few people, including Des Linden, holding back in the early going. But now there's no reason not to be up towards the front if you are a contender. And it's very unlikely anyone's going to come from way back to catch this group. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be a pickup of the pace as they get to that second half.
And there's Kara Gouchers also in this leading group.
Yeah, I think I said earlier that Kara is 34. She's actually 37, so I did her an injustice in a way because
she probably would appreciate that.
Well, she stayed focused for many, many years, but you know, she is one of the athletes who made the team in 2012. She's a 2:24 performer. She's a distance running icon, of course, away from the track. She has a huge profile as well. She's been great for many, many years. Won NCAA titles at cross country and 3,000 and 5,000. But this is a difficult section, this for Kara, I suspect, because it's just beginning. The heat's beginning to build up. We're mid-race now, Tom. They've gone through 8 miles with another 5:50 clocking. And I just wonder what is going through the mind of Kara, where her confidence has been low. The build-up has been pretty good, but, you know, confidence is so critical in this game.
Yeah, but she's had a year. She calls it a year of uninterrupted training. And if you wonder about the heat, think back to 2007 Osaka. She won the bronze medal in the 10,000 meters in a brutally, brutally hot evening there. She really is feeling confident because she's back to those same coaches that she had at the University of Colorado who got her to that NCAA title that you mentioned, and that's given her a great comfort to sort of be back home. By the way, one of her training partners for occasional speed work is Jenny Simpson, the world champion at 1,500 meters. Doesn't get much better than that.
Right.
Kellen Taylor here has been at the front for a while now. The times have been, you know, 5:50, 5:52 for the last 4 miles. They've been running more or less 5:50 there or thereabouts. And Taylor, I just sense there's a degree of impatience creeping into the legs of Taylor here. She's beginning to push on a little bit now. That Craig-Shalane Flanagan duo sitting right there in her slipstream. Sarah Hall we haven't mentioned yet, of course. Ryan Hall, who retired just 3 or 4 weeks ago, tucked in there in 4th place in the pink. Sarah Hall, I think, probably deserves a little bit more attention than we've given her so far. She's only a 2:31 performer at her best, but she's been rounding into form really well this last 6 or 8 months. That came in Chicago last October, and her confidence is growing.
And she's a great all-around runner. You know, we've seen her in the steeplechase. We've seen her in the 5,000 meters. So in a race that comes down to the closing stages, and rarely does it matter, speed can be a difference. Taylor, I think, is interesting in part because of her inexperience in the race. Only one previous marathon, so this is her 2nd marathon. But, you know, she did some brutal workouts where she'd run a 20-mile run, and she'd alternate between race pace or faster than race pace and slower. So she'd run 5:30 on the fast bits, and as we mentioned here, they're running about 5:50, and then run a slower portion of about a minute slower, 6:30. So that's a tough way to run it, and that's why she feels she's ready for a challenging type of race.
Kellen Taylor leading, and the men have passed the half marathon pace. 1:06:32 at the half marathon. They're on a 2:13 pace for the finish of the race. Tim Ritchie is the current leader on the men's side.
Yeah, still very, very little to discern from the way this men's race has unfolded, because that is a big pack at halfway, 66.5 minutes. I mean, frankly, athletes like Ryan Hall and 6 or 8 others there should be really jogging along very comfortably at this tempo. And I suspect, Craig, that with every mile that rolls by, Ryan Hall's confidence will be getting stronger and stronger, greater and greater. Because
Galen Rupp. You mean Galen Rupp?
Excuse me. Yeah. Galen's confidence because they're entering his territory. You know, when they're getting up to 20 miles and it's still a slow tactical affair, Galen will be chomping at the bit.
As they continue, the men and the women bidding for those Olympic spots. On their road to Rio, visit the Google Play Store and iTunes to download the USA Team app today. And a little breakaway has occurred in the women's race. As you see, Shalane Flanagan and Kellen Taylor and Amy Cragg have pulled away from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, Des Linden in the background in 5th place with Cara Gaucher behind her. And a difficult period this, I think, Tom, for Des Linden. Does she go with this break and think that maybe the gap will build? And that's the danger. Or does she think, whoa, hold on, we've only just gone through 9 miles. They did lay down the fastest mile of the race at 5:35. And in very, very early days. Does the smart head hang back from this push?
Well, when the break happened, she went right to the front of that other group, and you saw her up on her toes a bit, looking forward to the group, and then she backed off. So I think either she's feeling the pace, or more likely she's saying, this is not for real, they're going to come back to me. And that's what you need in the marathon. You need the patience. We see this in the big city marathons all the time, where someone will take the pace and push it, string the field out, and then suddenly the ones from the back will catch back up again. It's impossible for me to see Kellen Taylor continuing this 5:30 pace for very long in these conditions.
But it is a gamble, isn't it? Because you're watching 4 athletes disappear up the road. So back in 5th place there, little Des Linden, does she take the gamble and let these 4 go away and hope upon hope that 1 or 2 of them will come back to her, or does she cover it?
We could probably debate this for the rest of the race. I think that Sarah Hall is well above herself. You know, 2:31 is her personal best. So Des Linden can look ahead and feel confident she's going to get at least one of those 3. Kellen Taylor, as we've said all along, though, a bit of an unknown since it's only her 2nd marathon.
And meanwhile, the training partners, Cragg and Flanagan, are they gaining support from each other as this little break continued? Is that an advantage for them?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you know, it's kind of a subconscious advantage. You're just comfortable with your friend beside you. They've clocked up thousands of miles of training, many, many very hard sessions, those long runs they've been doing together. And Amy Cragg credited Shalane Flanagan there with being incredibly focused and keeping her training going through all the injuries she's had over the last few months, her Achilles, her back problems. So there's this incredibly strong bond between the 2, and that can only be a positive.
And as we mentioned earlier, they're both working to make the U.S. Olympic team.
Amy and I are so motivated to just be on this team together. We have found such a groove, and we are so in sync with our training that it would break my heart if one of us had to train alone for Rio.
When you run with someone every step like that and you work so hard with them, you are just as invested in their running as you are in your own. So we're definitely out there together. We're going to fight together, and we're going to make it happen where we both get on that team.
And the women there are Cragg and Flanagan, and they've just passed mile 10, and they've had the fastest mile of the race, 5:32.
Yeah, that's why you see the thing stringing out a bit. And you know, this bond that they've formed in a very short amount of time, because it's not been all that long that they've been training together, is really strong. It was made stronger by an incident back in December. They were out for a 10-mile run, and suddenly they saw a black bear speeding down the hill to their left. They kind of froze, let the bear feel comfortable with their presence, then turned around and sprinted with a little extra adrenaline in the opposite direction.
I guess. As the women continue, the 4 leaders there have opened up a 6-second gap on the other runners. Flanagan, Cragg, Taylor, and Hall, the 4 leaders here in the women's race.
That was meant to be a recovery run too, that one where they met the bear, so that day's training went all wrong.
And there's the men's race on the left. And still a big lead group in that men's race.
You know, it was interesting after they went through that slowish, we could call it 106.30 half marathon. Diego Estrada went to the front for a while. He's the U.S. half marathon champ, 7th fastest ever at that distance. He seemed impatient, Estrada. You see him on the left of the screen as if, hey, I know I can run, 6 minutes faster than this for a half marathon. Let's pick it up. But I think he thought the wiser of it, and he's back in the pack now.
Let's check in with Lewis.
Well, Tom, the men continue to move along here on Figueroa. The temperature, remember, started at 66 degrees. We're now up to 73, so things beginning to warm up. And again, the blacktop reflecting that heat up onto the athletes. They've been taking advantage of extra water, the extra towels that are out here for them. And the closer we got to downtown, some extra energy from the crowds who really have been responding to these athletes here running for their chance to represent the United States in the Rio Olympic Games. Now, as I mentioned, the temperatures are warm, but a week ago it was Meb Keflezighi and his coach Bob Larson who were actually at 8,000 feet at Mammoth, and here's a photo of that. And Bob said, listen, if it snows on February the 13th in Los Angeles, we'll be ready. He has a great sense of humor and said, when I asked him, Coach Larson, you know, what do you want to see Meb do? He said, I just want to see him win the Masters division. Well, if there's no Masters division, then just be in the top 3 and make the team. Right now, Meb continue to hang in there, and all these athletes doing well early in this race. Tom?
There's Meb and the men. They're in mile 15. And the women in mile 11. Well, it should be a giant party in Rio this August as the marathon continues to choose the members of the U.S. team, men and women. As you see, Pinnell has made a move on the men on the left side of your screen. And on the right side of the screen, Flanagan and Craig have moved ahead to lead that race together.
Yeah, Tom, that men's pack was getting uncomfortably large considering they'd gone through 15 miles. Now, this is really interesting because when Pinnell won the Twin Cities Marathon, the U.S. Championships in October 2014, his coach Peter Ray had said to him, do not lead until 16 miles. But when he cut loose, boy, did he look strong. That was his only marathon to date. He won it in 2:13. He was U.S. champion. And he, again, has been right under the radar. He's been one of the guys I've been trying to talk up the last month or so. And I'm not surprised to see this at all because this is a very, very strong move. Now, the Mebs of this world, the smart old heads might say, hey, youngster, you're doing it a few miles too early. He's got 10 miles to go. But this is a big surge, and that gap is opening fast.
But I think what's happening on the right side of the screen is probably, even though it's earlier in the race, even more significant. We talked about the fact that Kellen Taylor had pushed the pace, had opened up the women's race. Des Linden falling off the back, apparently. But then there was a key moment where the two training partners got together and really put their foot down and started to pull away from Taylor and Sarah Hall. And this looks definitive to me before halfway, which really surprises me, Tim.
That last mile for the women was the fastest yet, 5:31.
Yeah, so it's happening much earlier in the women's race, but I'm just looking at Tyler Pinnell. They're bouncing along. He's a beautiful-looking runner. You know, last year he didn't even run a half marathon, never mind about a marathon in 2015. He focused on getting his track speed right. He ran a sub-4-minute mile. He's now a 3:58 miler. He ran PRs at 7 different distances in 2015. He did that in 2014 as well. He's a real coming force, and I think that's displayed really well by this picture now. Second place, Galen Rupp. He knows what's going on here.
So Pinnell leads and Rupp has moved into second place, but Tyler Pinnell has made a move to lead the men's race by himself.
So that 16th mile just under 5-minute pace. So it's not a tremendously fast pace, but it was one that he was prepared to run. The others weren't quite. As you say, the move covered both by Rupp and Meb Keflezighi, who's right with Rupp.
Yeah, Meb looming there in third place. The old hand knowing exactly what's going on as Pinnell has moved to the front and Rupp keeping him in his sights, and Keflezighi minding his time. Meb is hoping to make his 4th Olympic team. He's been down this road before.
Pinnell has been training for 7 weeks down in Tallahassee in Florida, you know, and he's well acclimatized. So he comes here as one of the best prepared athletes. And when you look at his record over this last couple of years, they know they've got to take this seriously. The only thing is he's gone early. This is a big surge, and he can't back off now, Tom. So he's really putting a big burden on himself to try and lead for these next 9 miles or so.
And you see Meb there running in the colors of his alma mater, UCLA. A little bit of irony as he circles the USC campus in those colors.
It's great to be back in LA. I mean, I came here in 1994 to work with Coach Bob Larson and to attend UCLA, and that degree means a lot for me. Yes, the other school, USC, I'll be running by there, but at least I will have my UCLA colors going through that, because that's the only way to go to Rio. I'll take it.
And so there is Meb in third place at the moment. The temperature in the shade now 70 as they continue across the USC campus.
Meb told us he likes being the local favorite, you know, for what he calls his last Olympic trials. He said, everybody I know from Southern California is coming to this race. He said, even the guy that got me running in the first place, my 7th grade PE teacher. So lots of hometown favorite status, even on the USC campus for Meb.
And Tom, we saw there the first ladies being lapped by the men. This is one factor that created a bit of concern amongst some of us, because we felt that when they got into that USC section where they're taking in a lot of curves and they're trying to pass ladies and then glancing over their shoulders on the final lap to see their pursuers, and there are ladies in the way, it could get pretty complex. So Tyler Pennell here doing everything necessary. He's just got to keep his head down and focus now. And I think if you glance around in this situation and look at what's going on behind you, it gives succor to those behind you. They sort of they think, yeah, you're a little bit worried about us guys back here. So he's got to have tunnel vision from now on, I would say.
Well, I mentioned the story of Joan Benoit when she took the very early lead after 3 miles in the LA Games. She said she never once looked over her shoulder for the last 23 miles. And what was interesting was the great marathoner Bill Rogers was on the vehicle like Lewis and Carey are today, right by her, and he, of course, could see who was behind her, but she was afraid to speak with him because she thought it might be considered coaching and she might be disqualified.
On the right of your screen, Cragg and Flanagan have opened up 12 seconds on Kellen Taylor, who's back in third place. So 2 of the favorites, the training partners, have accelerated as the women's race gets faster and faster.
Well, I'm surprised Des Linden has not shown more effort to cover this. It was only assumed she's gone through a real bad patch, though. I think I can see Des right at the top of the picture, back in 5th place, but that's a big lead. Now, this is not surprising in the case of Shalane, Tom. She is, so bemedaled and such a quality performer. A bad day for her is everybody else's good day, as I was saying earlier. But Amy Cragg here, she's a 2:27 performer, and she's beating several ladies much quicker than her on paper.
But when we spoke with her, she was so confident about being able to step up to a whole new level that making this change in location, remember, she moved all the way across the country from Providence to Portland, starting work with a new coach, Jerry Schumacher, running every day with Shalane. She said even when Shalane was injured and struggling, she was still a great inspiration because of how focused she is. Every day was an important day, and when they would go out on their long runs, a lot of times Shalane would have to say to Amy, okay, you can keep up, you can run with me, you have the talent. And she said that gave her the confidence to step up to that next level.
And Amy, of course, finished in that heartbreaking 4th spot in Houston. Here she is with her training partner now, opening up a lead in this Olympic trial.
She did say, though, when she got that 4th spot 4 years ago, she was incredibly lucky to have another bite at the cherry and made the team for London in the 10,000 meters. But she said she's fallen in love with a marathon. This is very much her territory. And, she was born in Long Beach, California, so she says she feels like she's come home with this race. So everything's in alignment, I think, for Cragg here to put in a big performance in a way, even though this might have been less expected from her, perhaps.
And Tom, over on the left of the screen, Tyler Pennell, he has authored a 4:47 mile 17, and that's why you've seen that race break open a bit.
It's Pennell, Rupp, and Meb on the left from the men's race, and Flanagan and Cragg on the right leading the women's race as they continue here in Los Angeles, the Olympic trials for the marathon. Olympic marathon trials. You see the men's race there. Tyler Pennell still leads with Galen Rupp and Meb Keflezighi right with him. And now back into 4th place is Jared Ward, a ways back.
Ward is a master's student, has his master's degree, I should say, from BYU. And Ward wrote his master's thesis on optimal pace strategy in the marathon. So maybe he knows something the rest of these guys don't. He's coached by the great Ed Eyestone, a two-time Olympian in the marathon.
He's 8 seconds behind the leading trio at the moment. Let's go to Lewis.
Well, Tom, it was game on back through USC. That's where all the jockeying and positioning began. And Pinnell really made his move back there. And, of course, Rupp and Keflezighi had to cover it. It was interesting to watch as they made their way through some of those turns. Rupp kind of holding Keflezighi off with the almost like an elbow on a track race to kind of keep him back to not let him pass. But now Meb really continued to push the pace and surge. And to give everybody just a sense of the speed, I was talking to our camera bike operator, Logan, and he says we're averaging somewhere around 12 miles an hour. Give you just a sense of the speed. Things have picked up now, and these three have moved away with the closest runner probably 75, 100 meters behind.
Well, that 17th mile, Tom, was a 4:47, the fastest of the race. The gap 8 seconds back to Ward. Now, if he's going to close that gap on these three, Ward, who is incidentally the reigning U.S. marathon champion after placing third in LA last year, Ward has got to run, you know, if they're maintaining the pace, he's got to kick in at some 4:45s, 4:40s to try and close that gap. Very, very tough challenge. These three are looking strong. They're able to work together. He's isolated back and forth, and that makes it doubly tough.
So 3 leaders on the men's side. Meanwhile, on the women's side, there are 2 leaders. So the battle for third could be the focus there, as Flanagan and Craig have opened up the distance on the other runners, with Taylor in third, Linden and Goucher behind her.
And by all appearances, that's where the race is going to be. The race is going to be for third. It would be surprising if either of these 2 women, given the way they look, how they're running, the fact that they're supporting one another, would fall apart in the second half of the race. Linden, as we've been saying all along, so confident, so well prepared. Shocking for us if she's not the one that moves up into third place or grabbing third place. But that's why they run the race, as they say, and that's why the marathon is such a difficult distance, because anything can happen. What you've done before, how you've trained, none of that matters once you get into the race.
Well, the ladies have just gone through halfway, Tom, in 74:30, so they're just easing under 2:30 pace. But, you know, they are halfway. You could argue that 3/4 of the story is yet to unfold in this women's race. And Des Linden might be running the smartest race of all here, just biding her time, knowing that those last 3 or 4 miles are going to be hurting everybody with the heat building. And Des Linden, you've got to remember, they write a picture as experienced as anybody in this field.
Kara Goucher right behind her.
Also very experienced, of course, but it takes tremendous self-control, even if you're absolutely convinced that that move was the wrong move, as we said earlier, to let people get that kind of lead on you, to let them run away from you. It's interesting. One of the things about the USC part of the course is because it has so many turns, you lose sight of people. You know, you no longer have them in your vision. Of course, when you come to this part of the course, the long runs, the 2-mile stretches on Figueroa, then you'll be able to see them again. But it's disturbing when you can't see the people ahead of you.
Well, the men's 18th mile, Tom, was a 4:54, so they've eased back a little bit from that really vicious 17th, a 4:47. Pinnell's done the damage. He's broken it up and he's able to ease back now into the slipstream, if you like, of Rupp and Meb. So that was a pretty smart move from him. I think he ran really hard for about 3 miles, broke up what was a ridiculously large pack for 2/3 of the race, and now might have secured himself there in the red, a place in the Rio team. But, well, a lot of stuff to unfold yet. 30K.
So Galen Rupp, in his first marathon, has taken over the lead here. 12 seconds between those leading 3 men, and Jared Ward in 4th place.
You get a good idea of just how exposed they are to the sun, don't you? This is going to be really, really vicious, this last 45 minutes or so for the men. And I wouldn't want to be in Ward's shoes here. At least he's got them in sight. You can see them there, what, about 100 yards up the road?
Now 16 seconds difference between Ward and the leading 3.
Yeah, but if you'd like anybody's chances to have sort of gotten this right, it's the guy who wrote his thesis on pace strategy, and he also teaches statistics at BYU. And again, I think the coaches that the leading athletes have here are most notable. We've talked about Bob Larson, the coach of Meb Keflezighi. They've worked together for 22 years. Galen Rupp working with Alberto Salazar. When you look at Jared Ward working with Ed Eyestone. You know, the coaches don't develop their reputations for nothing. It's the fact that they've been in this game for a long time that gives athletes an advantage. And it looks like Pinnell's having trouble holding on.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Meb just beginning to turn the screw, looking to retain his title from 2012. Rupp, though, one or two people around us here in the booth saying Rupp looks like he's jogging.
So it's Meb, Rupp, and Pinnell starting to fall back a bit.
Pinnell going through a bad patch here. He really needs to focus. Because it's not like they've accelerated. I don't think Meb's doing anything spectacularly aggressive here. It's just Pinnell has run so hard for those 3 or 4 miles, he might have damaged himself.
And so as the race unfolds, we mentioned both ends of the spectrum, and there they are on the track. The 40-year-old veteran and defending champion and the first-time marathoner, Meb and Rupp.
Let's throw some statistics at this, and Tim's been good at keeping you abreast of the miles, but they went from a 4:59 mile to a 4:47 to a 4:54 to a 4:52. That's world-class marathoning, and reminds me of a workout that I heard about that Galen Rupp did. He ran 20 miles at 4:50 pace on a measured course, which is a pretty good workout effort. And they said that his heart rate never went above 150, which is remarkable by any physiological standard.
As they continue, the men at mile 19, men on the left, women on the right, starting to separate themselves in the trials. Welcome back to Los Angeles and the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials, where the temperature now is 75 degrees in the shade. What shade there is. On the men's side, Meb Keflezighi, the defending champion, leading Galen Rupp in his first marathon. Rupp ditching the hat that he wore earlier. Pinnell holding third, and Ward is fourth. The men are in their 20th mile. On the right-hand side, the women in their 15th mile. Shalane Flanagan and Amy Craig, the training partners, and Flanagan, the defending champion, have moved out with a substantial lead over Kellen Taylor in third and Desiree Linden in fourth.
Well, you've got Tom here, left of picture. Meb Keflezighi, the defending champion, the grand old master of marathon racing, who doesn't make mistakes. Trying to teach Galen Rupp, who's 29 himself, but the new kid in the block, just how to race a marathon. This is a fascinating duel now, Craig, because you've got Keflezighi in yellow with so much experience against Rupp, who with every stride is entering new territory.
Well, everyone says that last 6 miles, you run the first 20 miles, you race the final 6 miles, and nobody's a better racer than Meb Keflezighi. We've documented well 22 marathons he's run, 0 for Rupp until this one finishes.
As they lap some of the slower women, Meb and Rupp the leaders. And on the women's race, Craig and Flanagan continue to show the way by a substantial margin. And let's go to Carrie Tollefson for a report on the chase group in the women's race.
Hey guys, there's a lot of distance in between Amy Craig and Shalane Flanagan right now. I'm really quite surprised to see how much has gotten put on in the last couple miles. They're about 40 seconds up, and it looks like it's building and building. These two just look like they're in a training run. That's what Shalane Flanagan likes. She went out to Portland to train with Jerry Schumacher, but she's needed these training partners, and she's really needed women to be able to help motivate her. She has made every single U.S. team she's tried out for, and that gets to be grueling. And so for her to have Amy Craig pushing her right now, they look well within themselves. I'd have to say that chase pack is definitely looking more like they're hurting, and they should have maybe run a little bit more conservatively. I talked to Ben Rosario, who is Kellen Taylor's coach, and he said beforehand she was going to run right with Des, be very conservative over the first half of the race, and she actually did the exact opposite. She started to push this pace and she blew the race open, and now she's struggling a little bit. So we're going to have to see if they can regroup.
All right, Des Linden has just passed Kellen Taylor. So Linden moves into third, and Taylor now drops back to fourth behind the two leaders, Flanagan and Craig.
You could say that Des Linden is the Meb of the women's race, you know, running with such a cool, experienced head to some ease into third place at this stage with what, 1 hour, nearly 1.5 hours on the clock for the ladies. Pretty much perfect judgment so far, I would say, from Des Linden. And those two are in their sights now. You know, they've got an hour of running to do yet.
Yeah, hard to see anyone making the same kind of move that Linden is making, although we did see Janet Bauckham, a 10,000-meter team member for Team USA in the London Games. Linden, you know, it's important for her to win this race. She told us that. She wanted to be a winner of a marathon, but more important to make the team, for sure. And if she had some questions about her fitness or how she felt in the heat early on, she's not making a mistake to run for third if that's what it's going to mean for her.
And back to the men, who are now in mile 21 of the 26.2 journey. And Meb and Rupp continue to run together and have opened up the rest. The battle looks like it's going to be for third, with Jared Ward just passing Pinnell a moment ago to take over that third spot. And here's the move that Ward made.
Well, Pinnell struggling here. Look at that grimace. He's a long way from home yet. He's loping along. Ward has just got a little bit more fluency and speed into his stride, and that's been sort of predictable for the last 15 or 20 minutes. And look at Pinnell now. Top left a picture in the red. Way, way back. That's 100 yards he's lost in just a few minutes.
You know, I saw Ward when he went by our announced position, and something interesting was happening. The women who were trailing sort of became good fodder for him. He was able to use them and to make the moves towards the front by passing the women, get Pinnell in his sights, and then go into third place. Remember, he was third at the LA Marathon a year ago in very, very hot conditions, if anything hotter than this, and he ran his personal best, 2:12:56, in that LA Marathon. So LA is a very good place for Jared Ward at this moment.
And he was the first American finisher in that race by 4 minutes, I think, when he ran LA last year. That was in March last year, so nearly a year ago. But yeah, comfort zone for Ward.
Meanwhile, confirmation that Darren Ritzenhein has dropped out of the race. Ritz is out of the race, the man who finished fourth in Houston and was looking for redemption here in LA.
That's tough. Ritz said yesterday, you know, that this race, the prospect of making the Rio team, has fed him for the last couple of years. It's kept him fired up. Just like Des Linden has said, it's been her sort of drive, if you like, her motivation for the last 4 years. And that's a very, very tough day for Ritz. I feel sorry for him.
So Dathan Ritzenhein out of the race.
We did broach the topic of the possibility, if he didn't make this team, would he try again in the 10,000 meters? He really didn't even want to consider that topic. One, because he wanted to focus on this race, and two, he's really been away from the track for a long, long time, and I don't think he was confident that he could get back on top.
Well, I wonder what Meb there in yellow has got left up his sleeve, the defending champion. I wonder what else he can throw at Galen Rupp in this next, what? They're going to run 2:10. They've got about 25 minutes of running to go. Just over 20 minutes of running to come, I would say. So Galen Rupp has just got to keep focused, dig deep, stay on the shoulder of Meb here. And with all due respect to Meb, who is a supreme racer, Galen's 10,000 speed, 26:44, less than 2 years ago, is amongst the quickest in history. I mean, he's by far the fastest non-African-born athlete in the world. And now he hits the front there as Meb goes for that drink station, and he's bouncing along. He looks so comfortable, Tom.
So it's Rupp and Meb, 1-2 at the moment. Looks like the battle might be for third on the men's side. As you see the standings here, Keflezighi, Rupp, Ward, and Pinnell, Flanagan, Craig, Linden, and Taylor amongst the women. Back to LA in just a moment. Some of that ice might feel good here in Los Angeles. The men in mile 22, the women in mile 17. And here's Galen Rupp, the first time he's run past 20 miles, and he has taken the lead over Meb, with Ward now into third, well ahead of Pinnell as they lap some of the slower women. And on the women's side, Shalane Flanagan is in front. Amy Cragg staying right with her training partner as Linden claims third and Taylor drops back into fourth.
You can only imagine that Galen Rupp must be feeling great, because why else would he take the lead and push the pace? We saw him just before we went to commercial at a water stop, and as they got ready for this race, they realized he'd never been in a race where he had to really worry so much about what he was drinking or what his technique was. So they actually did a practice where they put out some water bottles and he dropped the first few. And Alberto Salazar said, okay, I think we better work on this a little more. Seemed to have good form when he picked up his last water bottle.
But you know what? Galen's moving to the marathon makes so much sense. I mean, yes, he was Olympic silver medalist at 10,000 meters 4 years ago in London, behind his great friend and training partner Mo Farah. But he's had a lot of near misses since then and before then, and he just doesn't quite have the wheels to get those medals against the best of the Africans, against Mo Farah. For me, his best chance of a medal in Rio by far is in the marathon, and this is very impressive. What we've seen enough so far today to say, yeah, Galen fits the marathon, whatever happens these next 4 miles. So this is brilliant news for US track and field. Galen Rupp will go to Rio, by the looks of things, barring Zasa these next 3.5 miles, as one of the favorites in the marathon. This is so impressive, and look at the way he's eased away from Meb.
And do you think he'll try the double, the 10K and the marathon?
I think he will. You heard him say that there's 9 or 10 days between the 10,000 meter final and the marathon. Actually, it's only 8 days, so someone's going to have to correct that for him. But it's been done before. We've seen it before. Obviously, you can go way back to the days of Emil Zatopek, who ran the 10,000, the 5,000, and the marathon and won all 3. Nobody can do that in this day and age. But they looked at how he felt at the 2012 Olympics. He won the silver medal. He came back in the 5,000, didn't get the medal that he wanted there, but he was fresh enough to compete in the 5,000 meters. That told him if he needed to run the marathon, he would be ready to do that.
Twisting and turning through the SC campus with Galen Rupp in front, and the gap between Meb in second and Ward in third now is 40 seconds.
Meb checking his watch there, Tom. He's just securing second spot, I think, now. I wonder how much he knows about what's going on behind him. Is he running a little bit scared now, because it looks like Rupp is heading for victory. But Meb's done enough to break it up. He broke Pinal, snapped him over his knee like a thin twig. I mean, that was really impressive. And he's secured second spot by the looks of things. But it'd be nice to see that gap back to Ward. Is he on a bit of a charge? 40 seconds, 3.5 miles to go.
Well, Meb would have to fall completely apart to be that vulnerable, but hey, anything can happen in the marathon. He is 40 years old, and he's a great veteran, so he knows what he's got left. I also want to pay a little bit of tribute to Rupp, who many people thought would wait to run his first marathon at one of the big city marathons, where he could have gotten maybe $500,000 in appearance money plus prize money. There is $80,000 in prize money in this race, but he chose to do it here because he wanted to run in the Olympics. He wanted to represent the United States. All of the athletes who could get big city paychecks like Meb, who have come here and run this race, deserve some credit for that.
Men now in mile 23 as Rupp pulls away from Meb in second place and Ward in third. And on the women's side, still Flanagan and Cragg there in mile 18.
I wonder whether they're actually having a little talk with each other occasionally. They will have gone through 1 or 2 bad sections, one of bad patches where you don't feel so great for a mile or two, and then they can reference with their colleague and get that assistance, psychological assistance, really, from the discussion. But, this is the dream they must have been working on for months and months, side by side. Second half of the Olympic Trials Marathon, way out in front. It's really, really impressive and good to see it, and a real credit to their coaches.
And it would be special, of course, for Amy to make the U.S. team after finishing 4th in Houston.
Finishing 4th at the Olympic trials was definitely a really tough experience. However, it made me a much stronger person and athlete. So I'm incredibly grateful, actually, that I was able to go through that, and being able to continue training and actually getting a second shot after the marathon to come back on the track. Very few people get a second chance at their dreams, so I'm just incredibly grateful for that. That being said, I am done being the girl who finished 4th at the marathon trials, and I'm ready to take that next step, qualify here, and hopefully do something great in Rio.
And doing well and taking that next step as she and her training partner, Shalane Flanagan, the defending champion, are right together in the women's race, a good bit in front of the other runners. Races continue. Galen Rupp leading the men's, and Flanagan and Cragg in front in the women's at the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials in Los Angeles. Rupp in his first marathon. He's opened up a big distance. He made a turn a while ago, looked back to see who was there, and he couldn't see anybody. And there is Rupp in mile 24, leading it with Meb second, Ward in third. And on the women's side, Flanagan and Cragg continue to show the way as they have virtually the entire race. The battle appears to be for third. Linden is third at the moment, but Kara Goucher threatening now and moving into fourth place.
Yeah, Kara Goucher just 8 seconds back under the last report on Des Linden, so she's got her in her sights. And wonderful run this from Kara, you know, whether she makes the team or not. There she is, Kara Goucher, you know, who's already made Olympic team. She took third 4 years ago and raced in London, and raced well in London too. You know, she hasn't received the credit she deserves for placing, I think it was in 10th place at the London Games. But Kara here coming back from an area, a zone where many people say you don't come back from that. You know, she's 37. She had a dreadful run in New York 2014. A lot of soul searching with her coaches whether or not she'd come back into the sport, stick with it. And she has, and she's got herself in great shape. And I think a lot of pundits of the sport have written her off, Craig, and will be surprised at the strength of this run.
Well, now 10 seconds between Goucher and Linden in the battle for the final spot on the U.S. team. There is Linden as we check in with Carrie.
Well, we're here right by Des, and she looks great. We just saw her coaches, and they said, get going, go get them. She looks like she's well within herself, and Kara Goucher is definitely within 8-10 seconds of her, and she looks great as well. The one thing about Kara Goucher is you never underestimate her. She can handle heat, and she's got the will like nobody's business, so she's holding on strong.
All right, so the battle for third place in the women's side, because Cragg and Flanagan have that sizable lead. As we check on the men now, and Galen Rupp running by himself. What an impressive debut for Galen Rupp as we pass the 2-hour mark in this marathon.
Well, if anything, he looks better than he looked before. There were moments where I thought he looked a little rough on some of the turns, but he's up on his toes. He's running with such tremendous confidence. Now, he's got something in the back of his head as he ran mile 24 in 4 minutes and 54 seconds. He has said he would like to run the U.S. Championships indoors because the World Indoor Championships at 3,000 meters will be contested in Portland, Oregon, his hometown, probably for the only time in his lifetime, right? Coming up in mid-March. How quickly can he recover from this race, and how much will these last couple of miles be in his legs if he pushes it hard, Tim?
Well, it does concern me, this statement that he wants to do an indoor season, you know, so soon after a marathon. I actually think, and Alberto Salazar knows this, so what do I know? But I think a marathon beats you up in ways that are not initially so apparent on the surface. And for Galen to go into a series of indoor races within the next month, I think is very, very risky. That's just my personal opinion. And I can go back to Eamon Martin, the last British guy to win the London Marathon. He ran a relay a week later, on top of his game. He was supremely fit. He broke his foot the following month.
There you see the margin of Galen Rupp's lead as Luke Puskedra moves into fourth place now. Ward trying to hold on third for the final spot on the U.S. team.
Meb just consolidating there. He knows the title has gone. And the Rupp will be quite spectacular winner of this spurring disaster over the next few minutes. But Ward, I wonder how wary is Craig of Pennell in the background. You know, sometimes it's good to have that fear in your belly. It creates a little bit more adrenaline when you desperately need it.
Well, it's difficult to know because if you turn around and look, which we've said before sometimes is a bad strategy, it encourages the person behind you. The course is littered with other people, right? You've got the women who you've been passing. It's a little bit confusing. You can't look over your shoulder and know whether someone's there. But at the moment, Puskedra is quite far back from Ward. Ward is in a pretty safe position. You can be sure that people supporting him are letting him know that. And by the way, he's confident about his ability to finish well because of an unusual thing. He likes to do squats, and I know we don't think of distance runners as great weightlifters, but we saw that Galen Rupp works out in the gym. Ward does work in the gym on squats, and he says it keeps that jello feeling from kicking in your legs in those last miles.
There's Jared Ward in third place at the moment, and a minute ahead of Puskedra.
Yeah, Puskedra's just going to run out of road, I think, even if he is closing. 1 minute 10 is a big gap behind Ward, so he's going to be a distant fourth as things stand at the moment. Meb looking strong here, and at the age of, Meb is 40. It is astonishing that he's put in such a strong performance today and turned back the challenge of dozens and dozens of great races, many years younger.
Well, I mean, this tells us something that we already knew about him, but it really puts an exclamation point. This man could have easily retired. He said it himself. Boston Marathon winner, New York City Marathon winner, Olympic silver medalist. He'd won the trials already. He didn't need to come here. But when we talked about his motivation, he said, my youngest daughter, she was there in London, but she didn't understand. She was only 2 years old. If I come back and I get to go to the Olympics again, she'll get to see that. That will be in her memory, and that's important to me. He's such a great family man.
He would be the first American marathoner to make 3 Olympic teams, and he will be the oldest U.S. Olympic marathon runner of all time at age 40. Right now in second place behind Galen Rupp. Look how far it is between Meb and where is Galen?
Galen way up the road. The predicted finishing time, Tom, for Galen Rupp is 2:10. 2:10 and a couple of seconds is what we're being told. He's at 40 kilometers now.
And, that would mean he ran his second half marathon in 1:03 in these conditions. And I guess this answers the question as to whether he's a good heat runner. We've seen him have some great races, even in Beijing last summer. He didn't get the medal that he wanted in the World Championships, but it was awfully hot there, and he ran very, very well. And he's run in such tough conditions today, a fast time in a race where he wasn't all out. We can say that for sure.
And I think Beijing last year kind of sums up where Galen is in his career. He was 5th in the 5,000, 5th in the 10,000. Great racing, great places in that American best. But he's a guy who wants medals, and I think now he's found his event.
Galen Rupp is 36 seconds ahead of Meb in second place. Jared Ward is third. He has about a minute on Puskedra. The top 3 will make up the U.S. marathon team for Rio. And it has been a tour de force for Galen Rupp in his first marathon, blowing the field away as they're in mile 25 of a 26.2 journey.
Dare I say it, Galen is perhaps heading for a career a little bit like my British colleague Paula Radcliffe, who was a great track racer but never quite got that gold medal. Indeed, she didn't get many lesser medals on the track, but she was a fantastic racer nonetheless. She was a World Championship silver medalist at 10,000. When she moved to the marathon, boy, did she fit it perfectly. It was just, she was made for it. And all the years gone by, and I think this is probably the case for Galen, they've been preparation for the marathon, frankly. He's got a very exciting 5 years ahead of him. Maybe more.
But there was always that mystery. You didn't know, because there have been countless great distance runners who have moved up to the marathon and didn't stick, didn't do well. And this is an impressive debut in these conditions for Galen Rupp. If you think about his training partner, Mo Farah, who ran the London Marathon and ran well, 2:08, but that was a big city marathon with great pacing, fantastic weather, flat course, none of these twists and turns that you have here. And that was considered disappointing. This is considered outstanding.
Have we mentioned the fact that the moths have been at Galen's vest? Look at that singlet. I mean, really sensible stuff. Just snip it full of holes. You don't want too much material around it when you can get a bit of air passing through.
Well, that's shades of Alberto Salazar when he ran here in 1984. His uniform was filled with holes in order to help with the heat.
Well, Galen Rupp has enjoyed his last little bit of shade there, going through that underpass, and now he's effectively in the home straight. Were a track race, he'd be coming off the bend and waving to the crowds, but this has been so impressive. 2:05.05 at 25 miles, Tom. A 4:56 there, so he hasn't even eased off, even though he's got the race won.
So Rupp has just passed mile 25 and sets his sights now on the Staples Center and the finish of this marathon race. Greg, you were talking about who knew what would happen. No one knew for sure. I saw him in the elevator at the hotel yesterday, and he laughed. He said, I don't know either.
Yeah, I thought he's just had a great attitude. And when we talk about him, what great talent he has. He's been working with Alberto Salazar since he was 14 years old. They're so meticulous in their preparation. But you know what they say? Yes, he's fast. He's run a 350-mile indoors. Yes, he's run great track times, and you documented that, Tim. But they said that something that people don't appreciate him is how tough he is. You endure pain in the marathon. And they were very confident that based on what he's endured in 10K races, that he would be able to step up to this marathon, endure the pain of the second half, and come out the other end with success.
And I guess part of the reason that Galen's not received quite the respect he deserves is because more often than not, he's a fighting second or third or fourth in the big races. When he set that US record to win 3 a couple of years ago, he won 26:44 for 10,000. Fantastic run. But usually you see Galen hacking down the home straight, chasing other people. Here he's in territory that he appears to be very, very comfortable with, and this is a big win.
And barring disaster, it appears that the U.S. team is set with Meb in second place and Ward in third. So now Galen Rupp, who may break his coach on Salazar's own debut, which was 2:09:41. Alberto Salazar winning his first marathon. And here comes Galen Rupp to the cheers of the crowd as he will come to the finish line.
Isn't it interesting, Tom, that the athletes in first and second places are both notable for the fact that they pay so much attention to detail. Craig, you alluded to Meb and his attention to detail, saying it's a 24-hour job at his age to stay fit, stay clear of injuries and so on. And of course, Galen is famed for attention to detail under the tutelage of Alberto Salazar. So these guys are doing everything to get it right, and they do get it right more often than not.
Less than 400 meters to go, and you saw the way he came around that turn, a little bit gingerly. I think he's taking it within himself to get to this finish line. No reason to overdo it, especially as we said, with those indoor races perhaps coming up in his future.
Well, this is a glorious celebration for Galen Rupp. I'm so pleased for him because you look at the way he applies himself under Salazar, and again he's just fallen short on the track. But this projects him towards Rio, Tom, in the most spectacular fashion. And the 10,000 will be preparation for the marathon, in my opinion, when he gets to Brazil.
And here he comes to the finish line. Galen Rupp winning his first marathon in resounding fashion to head the U.S. Olympic team. Rounding the corner and heading for the tape. Galen Rupp with all the crowd cheering in his ears, a big grin on his face. Here he comes down the home stretch of his first ever marathon, grinning from ear to ear. Galen Rupp is the winner.
And what a fitting winner. I have to say, Tom, he made that look easy. He really did. Astonishing.
Dwight Piera there. Max Siegel, CEO of USA Track and Field.
And Galen will make his third Olympic team. And here's Meb. He's going to finish in second place and make his fourth Olympic team. And he will be the oldest U.S. Olympic marathoner ever. He turns 41 years old on May 5th. Turning for home, Meb will once again be on a U.S. Olympic team. Has already taken the American flag, the Stars and Stripes, as he celebrates again his fourth Olympic team. Incredible. By the time they get to Rio, he will be 41 years old. Meb Keflezighi in second place. And still strong.
Looks like he could go around again. I got him at 2:12.20 there.
And his family joined him. What a moment. And as Craig said, one of the reasons he tried again was because of his family. And they'll be able to watch him in Rio. And finishing third and making his first Olympic team will be Jared Ward.
Well, that's a big step up in status, Tom. Ward, an Olympian, will be.
And there is Jared Ward with an embrace from Meb Keflezighi, and Galen Rupp approaches too. Those three are the U.S. Olympic team for Rio. There they are.
And what a great story for Ward. A year ago, third place finish, top American in the LA Marathon. Tracy Russell, the organizer of the race here, was so proud that he was going to be in focus here, might have a chance to make this race. She feels like the race contributed to his rise, because it was after that race where he ran third place in hot and humid conditions that he believed he'd have a shot here.
And there's real nice symmetry to that too.
Well, they're teammates now, aren't they, after all? So cool him off.
But Jared Ward, coached by Ed Eyestone, who was an Olympian himself in the marathon. You know, Ed will be, and of course we've used Ed before in broadcast. Ed will be there, punching the air big time.
Yeah, we saw Ed last night, and he said, keep your eye on Jared, and he was prophetic because he will be on the U.S. team. And in fourth place, that toughest spot of all, Luke Puskedra.
Well, for Luke, that time, 2:14.10, something like that. It's a tough one to swallow, isn't it? Fourth place in the Olympic trials, so near yet so far. And he doesn't have an option on a 10,000 place, realistically. Cruel way.
Puskedra, the man who was out of the sport, he really felt he'd reached his peak. He decided to get back into it, coached by Andy Powell's former college coach. Suddenly had that great time in the Chicago Marathon last fall, and you know, he was there, he was so close, and getting fourth place, as we said, the worst place to finish in an Olympic trials. But
the comeback kid, he was hoping to be here after he quit wanting to be just an average guy for a while. His wife talked him into coming back, and so Puskedra in that tough fourth spot. But all the talk will be about Galen Rupp and how great he looked in his marathon debut. So here are the results. Top three finishers comprising the U.S. marathon team for Rio. It'll be Rupp, Keflezighi, and Ward. As Rupp, grinning from ear to ear, punching the air with his fist, crossing the finish line. Meb on another team, his fourth U.S. Olympic team at 41 by the time he gets to Rio. And Jared Ward, his first Olympic team, getting ready to go to Brazil. Top three finishers, Galen Rupp, Meb Keflezighi, and Jared Ward. Let's go to Lewis Johnson.
All right, Tom, thanks very much. They are here with all smiles on their face, knowing they're headed to Rio. Okay, Galen, why did you choose to make this marathon trials your first marathon? Your thoughts on how it went and winning the way you did?
I was very happy with the way it went. You know, obviously, it was a bit of a change running the marathon, but there's no bigger honor than being able to represent your country at the Olympics. And, you know, an event like the marathon, I was thrilled to be able to, you know, to make my debut here, and I had a blast out there.
I know this just finished, but do you think now at this point, having just run 26.2 for the first time, that the 10K marathon double is possible in Rio?
It's definitely possible. You know, I think that there's plenty of time in between to recover. Obviously, the 10K is going to be very difficult. But, you know, I think that it's definitely a doable double, so we'll see this summer.
And we'll be waiting to see that. Congratulations. All right, Meb, you said running is your life, it's your job. So at 40, is that what explains how you were able to make yourself on another Olympic team?
You know, thanks goes to God. Thanks goes to God. He gave me a great talent, and my 7th grade PE teacher said, "You're going to be an Olympian 1988, Olympic year." Now to come back as a 40-year-old to make it, it's just, I've been blessed more than I could ever imagine, and I would like to thank everybody, my sponsor, the people who behind the scene make me happen, especially my wife Jordanos. You know, it's been a lot of sacrifice, but it's a full-time 24-hour job, you know, and it's been a wonderful ride. I'm just blessed.
All right, congratulations to you, Meb. We look forward to seeing you in Rio. And Jared, tell us about that move you made to secure your spot in third, headed to your first Olympics.
Well, these two guys went with Tyler. It was hot, and the pace was hot, and I covered it with about everything I could, and then waited to see what happened. And Tyler came back, but I was tired at the end. You know, no guarantees, even when you have 40, 50-second lead. And so I was fortunate to make it to the line.
All right, congratulations to you and everyone. Tom, 3 freshly minted Olympians headed to Rio in the marathon.
They are headed to Rio after that resounding win by Galen Rupp. And let's turn our attention back to the women now, still out on the course, and no change. They're at mile 22. And Amy Cragg and Shalane Flanagan, the training partners, supporting each other in training and supporting each other on the roads of LA today. And they are 1-2. See what'll happen in the final surge to the finish line between those two. Des Linden is back in third place, and she is about 26 seconds ahead of Kara Goucher, who is in fourth.
And she was about 35 seconds ahead in the previous mile. So there does appear that Kara Goucher is closing the gap, but is there enough real estate left for her to catch Des Linden?
It's going to be very tight indeed, because Des Linden is moving well there, isn't she? She's still got a rhythm. She's still got a relatively smooth stride. There's no indication of real fatigue in the upper body. I think Kara might well run out of road. But it's been a brave run this from Des Linden and Kara, because they're both isolated. They're on their own. And I guess Des doesn't know how far back Kara is.
Well, I'd be disappointed in the Hansons, her coach, who are so good at thinking of everything, if they haven't been out there giving her exactly that information. They are so meticulous in their preparation. They do these simulator runs where they try to recreate the conditions. And, you know, the Brooks Hansons team is very good at supporting members of their team. I'd be very surprised if she doesn't have that information.
And there are Flanagan and Cragg, who have a 53-second lead at the moment on Linden, who is in third place with that final Olympic berth up for grabs in this women's race. Meanwhile, Galen Rupp making his reservations for Rio. He won the men's side, and he did it with a flourish. The Griffith Park Observatory here in Los Angeles, as Galen Rupp putting the ice on those sore feet.
He started the day with ice, he ended the day with ice.
With a lot of smiles in between. And the women continue on the course.
I have to say, I've never seen someone have so much fun in a marathon as Galen Rupp did. These women don't look like they're having too much fun. I think we finally started to see the marathon race, the pace, and the heat start to pay a little bit of a toll on Shalane Flanagan and Amy Cragg. You see it a little bit when they go around these turns. They're tiptoeing, they're looking back. They're not looking forward at this point.
It's understandable, Craig, because they are shifting. Their projected finishing time, 2:27:30. That is of the very highest order. I mean, for Amy Cragg, that would be very close to her PR. And in these conditions, it's worth probably about 3 minutes quicker in perfect weather conditions on a different course. They're both hurting. What I'm intrigued by is when Amy Cragg will kind of give up this seniority to Flanagan and actually cut loose, because Flanagan looks to be hurting a little bit more than Amy Cragg, who glances across there, and I wonder if she's saying, can we start racing now?
Well, I think they're chatting about the status of the race and other such things, but it's a great question. Will the two teammates race? And if they race, will there be any ill effects of that if one triumphs over the other?
And as they continue to talk back and forth, 75 degrees in the shade now. Let's check with Carrie Tollefson.
Well, guys, this is the first time that I've actually seen Amy Cragg look like she has this race a little bit more under control. Shalane's been grimacing the last mile, 2 mile. The last time we were on this loop, she really was digging into the turns. She was using her athleticism. And right now, she looks like she's just hanging on. Amy Cragg is looking at her, trying to figure out what to do. Is it my time to leave her? Do I stay with her and be that teammate that they are? But I think Amy Craig looks like she's the one to beat right now.
As they pass the Coliseum, and Amy continues to look back and talk to Shalane.
Well, remember the story that we talked about, how when they did the 20-mile training run, the first time that Craig came out to train with Flanagan, and Craig was having trouble keeping up, and she said it was only Flanagan coaching me through it that got me through that run, which was at a whole new level for me. I wonder if it's a little bit of a turnaround here, that it's Craig who's sort of coaching Shalane through these closing stages of the race when Shalane Flanagan is feeling the heat.
Well, and of course, Craig in a real dilemma here. Does she cut loose and go ahead and win the race on her own and leave her friend and training partner behind? And Flanagan, if she has a real bad patch, now she was 53 seconds, they were 53 seconds ahead of chasing Des Linden about 5 minutes ago. Flanagan could be caught, and Goucher's on a charge as well, back in fourth place. Craig doesn't want to train for Rio on her own, so she'll probably invest some encouragement in Shalane Flanagan for another few minutes.
Well, they both told us that, didn't they? They said how important it was. They were at separate interviews, separate rooms. They didn't know what the other one had said. But both of them said exactly the same thing. It wouldn't be the same going to the Olympics and training for the Olympics if their training partner wasn't there. And that's what's going on right now.
Flanagan really looks like she's struggling now. Craig still keeping track of her training partner. There she goes with another glance back. And Carey is right there with him.
Yeah, you know, right now, guys, I think Amy Craig has a lot of revenge that she wants on the Olympic trials here in the marathon distance. She did this in 2012. She made a final push with at mile 19, and it did work for her. And she waited a little bit longer today, and I think it's going to work for her. Shalane is so tough, though. You cannot count her out. Even if she has another bad patch or two, she can fight through anything. So they're working together. They still look smooth. Their forms look great. But I think you can see a little bit of grimace on their faces to show that they've been out here a long time. They're ready for this race to be over. Back to you guys.
And back in third place is Des Linden. 40 seconds then back to Kara Goucher, who is in fourth place.
So we've seen that lead that she had over Goucher now extend. It was a bit of a yo-yo for a while, where it was 37, then down in the 20s, now back up to 40 seconds. I think as Carey Tollefson told us, it's very difficult because you don't know where the other runners are. There's no way to look back and see them, and that makes it tough to sort of focus your efforts on either catching or staying ahead.
Well, Kara will be getting loads of information, I'm sure, from what she can see, and indeed from the sidelines as well, about how Des Linden is holding on to third place. I guess Des has just got to consolidate now, so she doesn't need to panic. She needs to glance over her shoulder if she can. Those two are too far up the road to be caught. She just needs to consolidate third place. And of course, the top men and top women over these last couple of days of Craig again and again have talked about making the top three. That's the priority. Winning the race, kind of the icing on the icing. But top three is absolutely critical. Fourth place, as Ian Stewart once said, a famous British runner. First is first, second is nowhere. Today, third is critical, fourth is nowhere.
So Flanagan and Craig trying to hold on in the final stages of the women's marathon Olympic trial. Back in a moment. And mile 25 and approaching the final stages of this race.
They just ran by their coach, Jerry Schumacher, and hard to know what he would say to them at this point, right? He's gotten them to this great place, but there is the decision to be made as to who's going to win the race and how that will affect their relationship going forward. Not to mention the fact he's on the road. He's not even going to see the finish because he can't outrun them to the finish line.
Well, Shalane Flanagan there, to the right of picture, has said that she loves these criterion courses with repeat laps, but she did talk too about how mental energy and strength is going to be critical in this race today. This was yesterday. She was saying she knew it would be a very, very tough race. Tougher than usual because of the temperature, Tom. And this is where the questions are being asked. Now, it would be fascinating to know what they were saying to each other there, but Shalane Flanagan, to the right of the picture there, has got to dig very, very deep to live with Amy Craig, who does look the better.
let's not forget, we mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, Shalane Flanagan was hurt a lot of the fall, right? From September all the way through November, she was not able to do the kind of training she would normally do. At best, in a swimming pool, on an exercise bike. Only in December was she able to start running again. She came back quickly, but you mentioned, Tim, she had some Achilles injuries, she had some muscle injuries, and so here you see the two teammates sharing water as it's late in the race. So she had a lot of questions about what her fitness would be before she came in here. Amazing that she's gotten to this point now in the closing stages of the Olympic Trials Marathon.
And really, Flanagan getting a lot of support from Craig, as you see in this final few miles of the race, handing her a bottle of water there a moment ago. Shalane poured it over her head, and now Craig takes a bath as well. And here they are in the hottest marathon Olympic trial ever, and trying to support each other all the way to the finish to comprise 2/3 of the U.S. team.
Well, Flanagan runs well in the heat. She was confident coming here. She looked around this course a month ago. She said she liked it. She wasn't intimidated with the multiple laps or the corners. When she got her Olympic bronze medal at 10,000 meters in Beijing in 2008, it was desperately hot and humid. So she came here with so much confidence. And she's not finished yet. You know, we've been kind of sort of writing her off, but place your bets.
And third place, Des Linden. She is 40 seconds behind in third place, to hoping to make another U.S. Olympic team. Remember, in London she had to drop out of the race, so hoping for a little redemption in that regard to get back on the Olympic stage.
The good news for Des Linden is that Kara Goucher in fourth is 43 seconds back and suffering. Look at that. There's a real hesitancy to Kara's stride there. Now, we knew this concrete and that the asphalt would hurt the legs, but Kara looks there like she's running on very, very sore quadriceps. The thigh muscles, the big front thigh muscles, and then she is not chasing, she's not closing on Des Linden.
You know, so many of the runners told us that this was going to be a race of attrition, and I think we've paid proper respect to Kara Goucher for this incredible run, given the uncertainties in her training over the last couple of years. Des Linden, will be interesting to hear from her what caused her to fall back, because she seemed so on top of it the last couple of days when we spoke with her. She seemed ready to win this race, and that was important to her. And up in front, Shalane Flanagan overcoming the difficulties she faced over the last few months. And Amy Cragg, what a wonderful story. Yeah. Fourth last time, devastated by that as she looks back even in the closing stages to see if there's anybody that might catch up.
Maybe just telling Shalane, hang in there, as she looks back and just keep it up.
Again and again, Cragg just eases a couple of yards ahead and then drops back to her teammate and friend and has a little discussion, maybe trying to encourage her. But at some point, I think Amy Cragg's got to say, no, this is a selfish sport. It's an individual sport. I want to win this U.S. title.
Even the Kenyans could take a page from the team tactics we've seen here between these two.
Well, let's say it. There is a difference in prize money of about $15,000, $80,000 for first place prize money. And as we said earlier, these athletes have all given up the chance for the big paycheck in the big city marathons.
Well, I think that Shalane Flanagan could have no complaints if Amy Cragg did cut loose now. She said she really loves the companionship and the reciprocal benefits, she said, of training with Amy Cragg month in, month out through those hundreds and hundreds of miles. But now I think at some point you've got to say, look, it's been great, but this is my day. That's what I would be doing if I was Cragg.
And there you see Linden in the background in third place.
Wow. Linden is closing. No doubt about that. 19 seconds back. And Cragg may be wanting to help Shalane through this bad patch. The only good news for Shalane Flanagan's left there, Tom, is that Kara Goucher is a long way back in fourth, and I don't think there's a threat, but she may not know that.
Let's check with Carrie.
Hey guys, for just a split second there, it looked like Amy was getting up on her toes and getting ready to close this race out. She's still very concerned about Shalane. And she should be. Shalane looks like she's really hurting, and Des is closing really fast. But right now, Alistair Craig, who is Amy's husband, basically said, you have to go. You can't mess around anymore. It's time to take over and win this race. She's still concerned about her teammate, but she needs to get going here. She's given up a lot and sacrificed a lot to help Shalane, and Shalane's in good shape right now as long as she can hold it together. Back to you guys.
All right, we saw Craig look back again as Flanagan fades, and Amy Craig now taking command. Time for her to go, and the question is, will Flanagan hold on for second, because Linden is closing ground. You see the top three there, all in your picture: Craig, Flanagan, and Linden.
Linden has judged this almost to perfection, hasn't she? Because she is closing on Flanagan, and I'm not a betting man, but I would say that Linden's going to get past Flanagan very quickly indeed. Flanagan then needs to just sort of consolidate and hang on to third spot with Goucher way back, looking bad herself. But look at Des Linden there. She's really flicked it up.
You know, she always said that the thing that would distinguish her today would be her second half marathon. Now, not exactly the outcome that she planned on in terms of trying to win the race, but she's certainly showing what she's got in the closing stages here as she comes up and will soon pass Shalane Flanagan.
Well, so Craig is set out on herself as Flanagan continues to struggle, and you see Linden closing in. Here comes Linden. She'll go astride Flanagan and pass her by. So Linden takes over second, and Flanagan desperately trying to hold on to that final spot on the U.S. team.
And they say in these situations, the coaches say, when you go past somebody, fake it, accelerate, go past him like you feel great, look great, get up on your toes for a few seconds, really psych him out. And I think Des did that there. There was a noticeable acceleration.
Exactly. She looked better than she looked the whole race in that moment. She created the gap, and that's just enough. Now, the question is she looking forward, and is there any chance that she could get the victory here with the closing 2 to 3 minutes of this race?
Well, Amy Craig, you know, the question is she wait too late to leave her trading partner and open up a little more distance?
I don't think so. I mean, Craig here looks strong. She's working really hard with the arms. She's pumping harder with the arms now to keep those legs coming through. She'll be hurting a lot, but I think, you know, you talked about it, Craig, real estate is precious in LA. The prices are going up around here, and I think she's going to run out of it in this last few minutes. Biggest day of Amy Craig's career by a big margin. Even though she was an Olympian at 10,000 meters in 2012, this is the event that she loves, she's fallen in love with, and she's really nailed this one today.
And Goucher in fourth place.
Well, there's some irony to this, that now in third is Shalane Flanagan, in fourth is Kara Goucher. They used to be training partners for many years. Think back to 4 years ago where they worked together during this race for a period of time to get one another onto the Olympic team.
Interesting though, isn't it? All four of these ladies battling this out are well north of the age of 30. You know, it's not a young ladies event in the USA at the moment, even though there are plenty of Africans coming through. Kenyans, Ethiopians, they're 19, 20, 21, smashing up the commercial circuit. These ladies have got so much experience, but in the USA at the moment, it's the old ladies' game.
So 1, 2, 3 look pretty secure now. Craig, Linden, and Flanagan. Goucher struggling in fourth. But Amy Craig, who finished in the worst spot imaginable, fourth 4 years ago in Houston, and then won the Olympic trials at 10,000 meters to get her trip to London. And here she is leading and apparently on her way to victory in the marathon. What redemption after finishing in the worst possible spot just 4 years ago.
And at this stage of the race, Tom, the adrenaline's pumping because you know you've got the race won. Look at that, 385 yards to go for Amy Craig. She can begin the celebration. There'll be a little bit more bounce in those legs over this last quarter mile.
Great crowds along the way. They did something special. They called it Feet on the Street. They had more than 200 different groups that signed up to bring people out, and that's what the athletes were looking for. They wanted to have those crowds along the way to cheer them on.
And Amy Cragg about to come into sight of the people waiting at the finish line. Amy Cragg, redemption, fourth 4 years ago, and now the winner of the 2016 Olympic Trials Marathon. She'll make her second U.S. Olympic team. Amy Cragg, the winner. Born in Long Beach, California, returning to Southern California for a triumphal run here in the Olympic Trials. And now she awaits her friend and training partner, Shalane Flanagan, the defending champion, trying to hold on to that final spot. It looks like she will make it. Here is Des Linden. And what a story for her as well. Had to drop out of the race in London, and she'll be going back to the Olympic stage. She celebrates as she finishes second and punches her ticket to Rio.
Linden said she'd celebrate tonight with a special whiskey and leaves tomorrow for Bali on vacation. So she's got some fun ahead of her.
And here's Shalane Flanagan, obviously in distress, but holding on to make that fourth U.S. Olympic team and her second straight in the marathon. So Amy, applauding, will embrace her training partner and friend who has made, indeed, her fourth Olympic team as she collapses just beyond the finish line. And as she did for the entire 26.2 miles, Amy Cragg is there to help and support her friend.
And Tom, not only has she beaten the course today, Shalane Flanagan, and punched her ticket for Rio, but she's beaten all those problems over the last 3 or 4 months. She's had one problem after another. It's been very, very tough. So this is doubly satisfying for her.
Carried from the track to the wheelchair, Amy still by her side, as she was all day virtually. Flanagan in distress, trying to rehydrate her husband Steve. And here comes Kara Goucher. She will finish in fourth place. Just missed making the team.
Yeah, Luke Quistredra will be absorbing that fourth place now for the men's race. And Kara, she's back though. She's back. That's the good news she's got to take from this fourth place.
Linden embracing Goucher, second and fourth place finishers. And now Amy Cragg, the champion, comes over to greet her as well. Well, sweet redemption for Amy Cragg. Southern California, returning to her home area. She wins the marathon after finishing fourth 4 years ago. Linden in second place and Flanagan in third. Same first four as Houston, just in different orders, as Cragg wins, Linden second, and Flanagan in third. There's your U.S. Olympic team for Rio in the women's marathon. Afternoon, here are the official results in the men's and women's Olympic marathon trials. Galen Rupp, fantastic in his first marathon. Keflezighi making his fourth Olympic team, and Ward his first. And on the women's side, Amy Cragg, who was fourth 4 years ago, wins this time. Linden is going back to the Olympics, and Flanagan on her fourth Olympic team, collapsing as she crossed the finish line in third. Let's go to Lewis Johnson.
Well, Tom, what a dramatic finish we saw here in the women's race. And Amy, how did you bounce back from the devastating disappointment 4 years ago, finishing in fourth, to now winning these Olympic trials and heading to the Olympics?
Honestly, finishing fourth was something, like, looking back on it now, it was so good for me. It made me more determined than ever as an athlete. I've worked really hard the last 4 years basically to move up one spot. And so, like, the goal was top three. We were top three. And that's all. Like, I'm just so thrilled to be going to Rio.
Can you just describe your mindset as this race, especially in the last stages there where you were helping Shalane, communicating with her, and how you had to decide when to leave? How did all that work out in your mind?
So I was really hurting on the third lap, and Shalane, I think, could kind of sense it, because all of a sudden she looked over at me and she was like, hey, no matter what, like, I'll be here. You like just focus on me. Like I'll stay by your side. We've got this. And I was hurting, and she got me through that rough patch. And so then when she started going through a rough patch, it was like I felt the same. And so we we ran together until probably mile, I think it was like around 25. And then I saw Des coming up, and so I decided to go. So, but she did amazing. I think she was overheating a little bit out there, and so she really just like toughed it out, like one of the toughest people I know.
Right.
So.
And Shalane, what did Amy's help mean to you?
She is the epitome of what a best friend is and a teammate, and that's why I'm part of this sport. You know, football players have the locker room camaraderie, and we have the road and the track camaraderie, and she was instrumental. There's a point where I thought, I'm done, I can't do this. She completely talked me through it, and sweet baby Jesus, I'm so thankful for her.
And Desi, for you, you had to drop out of the London Marathon 4 years ago. Your thought of getting back on that stage one more time?
Oh, it's indescribable. I mean, you don't get opportunities like this every day. I feel like it's been this Sisyphean task where I get to the top and then the rock crumbles down, and I want to do it better this time. And reaching the finish line in Rio will be a huge check mark and just highlight of my career. So I'm going to prepare for that and hopefully get it done this time.
All right, Desi, congratulations to you and everyone. Congrats. We'll see you all in Rio. Tom?
All right, Lewis, there is your U.S. women's marathon team for the games in Rio, as Shalane Flanagan, suffering from exhaustion, will get a wheelchair ride away. That wraps things up here at the Marathon Trials. Coming up next, the world's best free skiers take on the halfpipe in Park City, Utah at the U.S. Grand Prix. Then at 5 Eastern, Olympic medalists go for big air at Fenway Park. That's right here on NBC. So for Craig Masbach, Tim Hutchings, Lewis Johnson, Carrie Tollefson, and all our NBC crew, Tom Hammond saying so long from Los Angeles.